Hi, I'm Jessie. I'm a cannabis nurse and the founder of Marijuana Mommy, and you're watching Patients Are the Proof, where we talk about the real benefits of cannabis. Today, I'm chatting with Zoe Sigman. Zoe is the program director of Project CBD, where she's responsible for making sure things get done. From writing and editing to developing workshops and sending out the newsletter, her duties touch on every aspect of the organization. Sigman has testified about CBD and cannabis regulation to the FDA and regularly speaks about cannabis science to patients, medical professionals, and consumers. She's an award-winning educational content creator and also serves as the science editor for Broccoli Magazine. Hey, Zoe.
Hi, Jessie. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I truly appreciate it. And I am such a huge fan of Project CBD. You know, so many clinicians are. It's this amazing, remarkable resource. I'd love to hear a little bit about how it got started and the history behind the site.
Yeah, so Martin Lee is the person who co-founded Project CBD. He's a writer and he's been an activist for a really long time. He's a really amazing writer, and he was writing a book about the history of the prosecution of cannabis patients. And in his research, he went to a conference called the International Cannabinoid Research Summit, which is like the best conference on cannabis science ever. And I think that was in like 2005. And while he was there, heard a lot of doctors and researchers talking about CBD. And at that point, no one knew what CBD was at all. It was all about THC. He lives in California, and he was kind of like, well, someone should really write about this molecule. It's really interesting, and like people should know about it. And so he started writing about it. And then so Project CBD was started in 2009. And yeah, he kept writing and recruiting really amazing and talented writers to write for him about cannabis medicine and cannabis science. So that's sort of the short history.
It's become such an amazing resource for science and research about, you know, not only CBD but all cannabis related scientific questions.
Thank you. We really try.
Yeah, it's really amazing. It's like one of the things that clinicians go to right away if they need reliable information, because, you know, on the internet, it's sometimes hard to find science-based information about many of the products that we are utilizing. And that's, you know, that brings up a good point to, you know, why Project CBD filled this deep need, because there's not a ton of research out there about cannabis in general.
Yeah, I am being interrupted at the moment. Sure. Let me pause. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. All right.
They're like, get out.
What are you doing here? Yeah. Phone booth was like camped out in.
That's so funny.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Cool.
Here we are again. Different
Marvelous. New background. That's fine.
Okay. Research question.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Could you ask that question
that's okay.
again?
Absolutely. Yes. So, you know, there's such a lack of research about cannabis and CBD in general. And it's interesting how many people cite that as, you know, one of the reasons it should stay legal. But can you speak a little bit about that? Why do we see so little research about cannabis?
Totally. Well, there's a ton of research about cannabis, and so that's a bit of a misnomer. The thing that's really difficult in the United States is to work with the plant itself. So there's a couple of reasons why people perceive there being such a small amount of research. And one of the primary reasons is that researchers can't work with the plant in the US. But there's an incredible amount of research coming out of places like Israel and Italy and Spain about researchers who are actually working with the plant-derived compounds. And so it's just, you have to look for it a little bit more. And then there's also like the fact that the system that THC interacts with in our bodies, the endocannabinoid system, was only identified in like the end of the 80s and really by 1990. And so it's a relatively new system that's still pretty poorly understood. And so we know a lot more than we used to know about it, but as compared to systems in our body, like the endo-opioid system or like the circulatory system, we don't know exactly how it works and what impacts it. And so like it is a burgeoning field. And I think part of what's challenging right now about the sort of research question is sorting through all of the research that's out there. Because it's like, we're answering these little tiny questions, trying to advance the field. And there are, you know, thousands and thousands and thousands of articles about cannabis and cannabinoids, the endocannabinoid system when you look at PubMed. And it's just like, you can't, it's really difficult to figure out which ones are worth reading and useful.
It's so true. And, you know, it's so hard to sort through, but that's such a good point that it's the US that is lacking research. It's not cannabis in general. And it's funny to hear that from so many people in the United States. You know, so many people profess that the lack of research is why it should stay illegal, or, you know, why it shouldn't be used as a medication. I can't tell you how many doctors who are like, there's no research. And then when you show them, oh, no, look, this just came out of Israel about autism. Yeah. It's a controlled study. No, that's not American research, you know, and it is. And but there is so much legitimate scientific information out there that we can access. So thank goodness for, you know, resources like Project CBD.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's like definitely, even before I worked at Project CBD, it's one of the only resources for lay people out there, like that amalgamate a bunch of research that's useful and applicable to a bunch of different people. And that's like something that's absolutely vital. And it's hard when you love like digging through journals and databases and people are like, oh, well, where do you get your information? It's like, well, I look at PubMed, and like then I go to the journal,
scour through, and you look at all the related articles. Yeah, I get it.
So, yeah, totally. I'm sure you do. Yeah, and so Project CBD is like just a little bit more accessible for a lot of people, which is really definitely awesome. And now I work there.
A lot more accessible. That's great. So what types of things, what are you noticing from the public that they are the most hungry for information regarding CBD or cannabis in general?
Yeah, it runs the gamut. It's crazy, I think, because cannabis has been in sort of like this gray state on the West Coast for such a long time, legality wise. And like now we're seeing CBD becoming more legal nationally, although that's really convoluted right now. And so people on the West Coast who are more familiar with cannabis have more advanced questions than people who are in the rest of the country. So like in New York, people are like, what is CBD? And on the West Coast, people are like, tell me exactly how it works. Does it help with pain? Like, can you tell me why it helps with pain? Does it help with pain if you put it on my skin topically? How does that work? You know, and like, there's a lot of questions about topicals. There's a lot of questions about using cannabis sexually. So, and there's a lot of questions that are sort of unanswerable right now, which is always really interesting. It always seems like those questions come up where in like, once you hear it once, it's like, you know, that over the next month, you're going to keep hearing that question in particular. And it's like, oh, yeah, okay.
That's amazing. It's incredible. You know, like you point out how different it is on the East Coast to the West Coast. Because are you from California? You're on the West Coast?
I'm from Chicago originally.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Where do you live now?
Portland.
Oh, okay. Great access there. I mean, great prices. Here in New Jersey, it is so difficult to obtain cannabis, even as a patient. You know, we have 6 dispensaries and it's a small fortune. But just like you said, the information gap is really dramatic, and it's shocking in this day and age of the internet that, you know, we don't have more people, you know, more aware of it. But, you know, that's starting to develop.
Yeah, but it's also, I mean, like, it's difficult to sort through information on the internet too. And I mean, like, one of the most common questions that I got when I worked at the dispensary is about dosage. And like, dosage is actually a really complicated question to answer. And people don't want complicated. They want to be told, take this and you'll feel better. And
take 2 and call me in the morning.
Right. And that's not how it works with cannabis. And so it's and there's a lot of websites writing a lot of different things, and it's just
and giving inaccurate advice. Yes.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think like one of the interesting things about cannabis is like it opens up this conversation about you and your body and like taking control of your health and like really being aware of what you put in your body and like how that impacts you, which is a difficult conversation to have in America. So
Absolutely,
yeah.
because we have that mindset where I'm going to take these 2 pills and then let my doctor know how they work, and this is what it works for everybody. I go through that all the time with patients, that cannabis is about self-titration and self, adjustment, adjusting your dose according to your feelings. And that's hard to teach people to get in touch with how they feel instead of listening to what the doctor tells them they should feel.
Yeah, definitely. I love when people are like, oh, I mean, like, I'm kind of interested, but I don't want to feel high.
Yes.
And I'm like, and these are people who are on like serious medication.
Yes.
And I'm like,
yes,
opioids make you feel high too. Like they're not doing nothing.
Yeah, I know. That's such a misconception. That's such a misconception for so many patients that, cannabis is so different, in the feelings that it's going to cause from other medications. And it's not true. They're very similar in many ways.
Yes. Yeah.
So
and
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, it's just people are looking for a magic bullet. They really don't want to they just want to feel better. They don't want to feel altered at all.
Absolutely.
And that's totally reasonable.
Mm-hmm. So, that's true. And it's hard too at the same time because cannabis is not magic. That's what I always go through with my patients, that cannabis is an amazing, remarkable tool, but it's just one of the tools. And there are so many things that people have to do to, really reclaim their wellness. And it's more than cannabis, but the most beautiful, amazing part about cannabis is that it really helps patients take advantage of all of those holistic tools. So cannabis, for example, we know, tends to increase, the desire to exercise in patients as opposed to, opiates, which is, more sedating and fatiguing. So it's amazing. Yes. What do you think we're going to see in terms of development as the industry progresses in the next 5 to 10 years?
I mean, so it's been interesting to see what route researchers are taking. I think like pharmacologists and chemists in general really are still in the Western science model, which is like one molecule for one target for one disease. And so we're seeing more and more synthetic cannabinoids being developed, looking especially to target the CB2 receptor and not the CB1 receptor, which if they could do it would be pretty.
Explain why they want to do that.
Yes. So the CB1 receptor is responsible for the feeling of being high. And CB2 is, it modulates the immune system in a lot of ways. And it's been found in a lot of autoimmune disorders to really benefit people, whether that be Parkinson's patients in terms of their spasticity or people with this rare autoimmune disorder that I studied called scleroderma. It just seems to have the opposite effects on those diseases than CB1 activation. And so researchers are really trying to figure out how to modulate that receptor alone, but it's nearly impossible.
So they're trying to get the benefits, the health benefits, without the intoxication and the euphoria.
Yeah. Right.
Which we don't know if we can do that, but.
Right. And it's also like CB1 also has lots of benefits health-wise. And I think like you get into this conversation a lot where people are like, oh, I want the CBD. I want the good one, not THC, the bad one, or like the one that's good for you. And it's like, they're good for different things.
Yes. So true.
Yeah. So yeah, CB2 activators. And then, yeah, I'm curious whether there will be a larger discussion about what constitutes the endocannabinoid system and how to modulate other things within that larger system. Just because right now it's really just those two receptors and the things that bind to them and the enzymes that interact with them that are considered a part of that system. But
well, a lot of clinicians consider like the TRP receptors and orphan receptors to all be, all part of the endocannabinoid system because it acts, the molecules do act upon those receptors as well. Yeah, it's amazing. Right. I think you're right. I think we're going to see a lot more about how complex the endocannabinoid system is. And it's really dynamic too. I think we're going to start seeing more research into that, how different things can, present, from moment to moment even.
Yeah, no, it's really incredible. Just like seeing, I'm really excited for there to be a baseline of understanding about like the sort of standard expression of the endocannabinoid system, because you see a lot of papers about the dysregulation of the endocannabinoid system, but there's really no standard set for
That's
like
a
how
good
it should
point.
function.
Yes, that's a great
And
point.
so, yeah, and it's sort of interesting because I've been like, people have been tossing around this term endocannabinoid tone, which is how your endocannabinoid system is functioning and how it expresses, but no one has defined like what it should function like.
That's a really, really good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like there's some basic questions that we need to answer to really move forward. So yeah.
Awesome. What about legalization? You think federal legalization, you think it's coming ever?
I mean, yes, it depends on, next November.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
but it's coming. It has to come. And I think at this point, it's an economic reality that the federal government can't ignore.
Right.
I mean, they could, but it would be
so detrimental to the economy.
To the economy and to them. And like, so yeah, it's coming. It's just a matter of time.
Can't wait.
Yeah,
I know so many people feel the same. Although in Oregon, you guys are very comfortable with your supply and your prices.
My God, we have so much. Yeah,
I'm so
totally
jealous. I know we really need, interstate commerce with cannabis. Badly.
Yeah. No, it would be so good. Well, and partly reason that prices are so inexpensive in Oregon is that growers are having to sell for below the cost of production. And it's like, and because they can't declare bankruptcy because it's federally illegal.
Right.
And it's like, yes, that's cheap. It's good for consumers, but it means that really amazing growers are going out of business.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking.
And so that's where interstate commerce would be really cool, because it's like Oregon, California have really amazing growing circumstances.
And we could really, really use that product, and people would be very happy to pay for it over here.
Right. Yeah. Really. It's so crazy. It's so crazy.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up. Is there anything you want to add?
Not really. I mean, the one thing that I have been sort of talking about to everyone who I've been talking to is about the way that the FDA might regulate cannabis. So I talked to the FDA, or testified in front of the FDA in May, and I submitted comments in July. And they were looking for input on how to regulate CBD in cannabis, because Congress at the end of last year legalized the growing of hemp. But basically they said like the FDA is responsible for anything that is consumed that's derived from hemp, which would include CBD. And the FDA was like, but it's federally illegal. We don't really
wait a minute.
And so I guess I would encourage people to look into what the FDA does and does not do. I was pretty shocked when I started doing research. Like, supplements in this country are basically unregulated.
They're totally unregulated.
Yeah. And a lot of people in the cannabis corporate world would like cannabis to be regulated as a supplement. And that would be really like problematic for consumers, because there could be a lot of issues. And so, I mean, basically, read about the FDA. I did write a report, if you are interested in reading it, on Project CBD, about how to regulate CBD.
Yes, absolutely. Where can people find it? What's the title?
Yeah. Well, let me actually look up the title. It's changed titles so many times.
And I'll link to it in the comments also.
Yeah, I'll send you the link. It's like regulating cannabis as a traditional herbal medicinal product.
Okay. A search for that will probably pull it up, but I'll definitely put it in the comments as well. Send me the link.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I will. So talking to your Congress people about it, and just like, I think that it can feel really disenfranchising politically at the moment to contact your Congress people, because people don't feel like they have any power. But the only way they're going to know that you're interested in something is if you tell them. Otherwise, all they hear from is lobbyists. So yeah, reach out to your Congress people.
Speak out. Contact all your elected officials. Tell them all. Your local, your state, your federal, everybody.
Yeah.
You're right. It is. A lot of people don't even take the steps to contact them because they're like, it's just one voice. But all those little voices do really create an impact.
Yeah, they do. So that's like my little bailiwick that I'll
fantastic
sail out on.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's projectcbd.com.
.org.
Oh, .org. Excuse me. It's projectcbd.org.
Thank you
Fantastic.
so much, Jesse.
Oh, thank you, Zoe. I appreciate it.
Yeah, have a
I'll
good
talk to
night.
you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.